I mean, I think you are absolutely right that, this strategy, I mean, the first number of years that I was in Congress, the Republicans were trying very hard to make deep, deep cuts in social programs and in other important investments that are essential to growing our economy: education, workforce training, Pell Grants, and the like. They were not successful in cutting nearly as much as they wanted, so they tried a new strategy, and that was give away the money. Because if you give away $2 trillion in tax cuts to the richest people in this country, then you can say, oh, we don't have any money, of course we have to cut these things, because we just gave it away. And so, like, as if it was, pre-planned, after they gave away a $2 trillion tax cut, 83% went to the top 1%, to the richest people in this country. They made more generous the tax breaks that they give American companies for shipping jobs overseas. And to pay for it, because it was unpaid for, they're now proposing, exactly as you predicted, cuts to Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, Pell Grants, and the like. So this is exactly their strategy. And we have, now that we have at least the majority in the House, we will now approach this in a very different way. And when we're thinking about how we're going to fund the infrastructure bill, you could just take away the tax cut for the top 1%. You could fund the whole infrastructure plan and then some. So we ought to be having, we're going to have an opportunity to look at tax policy so that you can incentivize the growth of the middle class, make sure people at the top are paying their fair share. We're looking at a number of things that will be in my committee that will provide greater balance in the employer-worker equation, so getting rid of non-compete clauses, getting rid of forced arbitration, making it easier for people to organize and belong to unions. This income inequality didn't just happen on its own. This is a result of a set of policies engineered by big business, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, multinational corporations to enrich their shareholders at the expense of working people. So we have to just go back and undo those things and put into place policies long-term that really strengthen and grow the middle class. The thing that I'm always puzzled by, and I always have this conversation with my Republican colleagues, is it's in their interest. If you're a business owner, it's in your interest to grow and expand the middle class. If you ask any small business in Rhode Island, what do you need to grow your business, to add some jobs to your company? They'll all give you the same answer. They won't say a tax cut. They won't say, a grant from the government. They'll say, I need more customers. I need people to buy the things I make or the services I sell. Well, that's what the middle class does. If people have money in their pocket, they could both create the demand and buy the goods and services business produces. So it's in the interest of business, in the long term, to have a growing and strong middle class that has more money in their pockets to buy goods and services. I think, sadly, a lot of policy that has been pushed by multinational corporations and big companies in this country has not looked at the long-term value of growing the middle class. They've looked at how do I grab as much money as I can in the short term. And so, for them, it's like that tax cut was great in the short term for them, not such good policy in the long term. But I think, we have to get people to start thinking about long-term implications of regulatory policy, tax policy, and the other work we do. And I think there's a lot of discussion right now about that, now that we're in the majority. I also think we have to, and this is a much harder one, we have to really understand the implications of automation. Nearly 3/4 of the jobs we've lost in this country are not because of bad trade deals, although some of them are because of bad trade deals, but a lot of them are because of automation. And that's just a fact. And sort of figuring out how we respond to that with, in my view, really deep and substantial investments in job retraining and education and all the things that help people transition to new careers. But it's hard. You used to go into a factory and there would be 20 people on a foot press producing 1,000 yards of fabric. Now there are no people on that foot press producing 5,000 yards in half the time. That's a fact, and we've got to, that automation, while it brings lots of wonderful things and cheap goods and a lot of other things, it has an impact on work and on the availability. So I think we've got to do really long-term planning and understanding automation. I actually included in the National Defense Authorization Bill last time an amendment to get DOD to do a report about the impact of automation on their procurement stuff, just as one way to kind of get our foot in the door to start thinking about it. But you're right, we have to think about this much more long-term, and we have to understand the moment we are in to seize it so that we change regulatory and tax policies that will actually produce good wages and better jobs.